Huh.
Hey guys, it's Dane at Jonah Guitars, and I got a brand new build series I'm going to start uploading. It's about this guy right here, the GECKO, and all of the whole process of building will be covered. It's going to be a very complete series. So I hope you join me, and we'll see you there. All right, so I've got the 9.5-inch call in there right now, and like I said, this is my drill press. Just try to center the pivot point up in the center of the neck, and press it on in. And we'll go down the board like this, and then then I'll change to the flatter coal, and call, and we'll go from there. Oops. Alright, well, I lied. I did not go in the house. I found a piece of bar stock to bang these struts in with. Excuse me. And it turned out that this router bit wrench or collet wrench, worked out really well. Just right on top, just banged over a couple at a time, back and forth like that. So I just worked myself across the fretboard, basically banging frets as I went, and everything leveled out really nicely. I'm very, very pleased with how these things set down. They weren't very far off anyway after pressing, but except for down here in the flat area where, like I said before, I didn't have a flat enough call to really get that to go. So what I'm going to do now is just take some paste wax. This happens to be Johnson. I have tree wax or brie wax, or what's it called? It's tree wax. I also have turtle wax. So I'm not trying to favor a particular brand. I've had this can for 20 odd years, easy. And when I was running a full-on cabinet shop, I waxed my table on my table saw all the time. Waxed saw blades, that sort of thing. And I'm going to wax the fretboard because I'm going to glue the fret ends, and just in case any wants to run back up on top. But you keep it pretty dry. You don't want to get tons and tons of wax on here, because you don't want to force that under the fret at this point, because that'll obviously have something to do with how well the glue adheres to the fretboard. We are mainly concerned with the fret slot, so it's not huge, but just in case. So what I'm doing is I did a little tiny dab of wax in the can, and so I'm going across the board like this, just in the middle of the frets, between the frets, just to get it evenly spaced around. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to work myself up against the fret, and having already done distributed most of the wax onto the fretboard, I shouldn't have an issue with jamming wax under the edge of the fret. That's the intent. I think I might grab a piece of paper towel though, because this rag I'm using is so big, it's a little unwieldy. And things like when I first started waxing my table saw, I was worried about getting wax on the wood I was cutting that would interfere with the finishing and all of that sort of thing. Well, on a fretboard it's not particularly a problem, because you don't really finish the top of the fretboard unless it's a maple board. And but I've found that usually by the time you have processed the wood, sanded the wood, you know, built what you're building, sanded the wood, you know, all of that. By the time you get to the actual finishing process, there's really no wax left on the surface of the wood that you may be trying to finish. So, and also, if you were really concerned, you could take and wipe your project down with naphtha, which is a good way to get wax off of the wood. Here in the glorious state of California, naphtha is, I guess it's legal in small enough quantities, so they call it lighter fluid, and you can get that, but you can't buy a quart or a gallon of it any longer in California. It's been like that for several years now, and I don't get it. They're just now changing lacquer thinner over to a zero VOC lacquer thinner, which makes absolutely no sense. That they kept lacquer thinner on the market and took naphtha off. So obviously these people don't know their chemistry. Or I don't. There's that possibility. So I'm using medium CA super glue. As you can see, I'm using Type Bond. Then I can source that locally at the hardware store where I work, and I'm using medium because it's just less likely to run all the way through to the other end. It will run in there. It's not so thick that it's not going to go down in the slot, he says, as he's hoping that it goes down in the slot. So this is just basically tack welding that tang in place. I like to do this also before I cut my fret ends, in case there's any chance that there's a loose, if you do this sort of thing, you know that when you cut, you get a different kind of sound when it's not really tight. And then when you start filing, you get this chatter that happens. And so that's why I like to do it before I cut or do any trimming. If I do have any looseness on a tang, I don't I don't want to discover it while I'm filing, just because if it has a chance to vibrate, I think it's going to loosen up even more. My own little bit of reason there. All right, so give those a second chance to wick into the hole, and then come back by with paper towel and just dab any excess there may be. Doesn't look like there's much excess to be dabbed at this point because it's run on down. And flip it over and do the same thing. With water thin or number 10, depending on where you source your stuff, like if it was a stew mac, they'd call it number 10 water thin. That would run all the way through the slot, no problem. It would be dripping out the other end. And since I'm really only trying to tack the tang here, I don't need it to run all the way through the center of the slot. Hey, you know, while I'm yammering here, anybody that has any idea where I can source these little whip tips, this is an item that StewMac sells, and that's what it's called, a whip tip. And they also have pipettes that have a very, very fine end on them, much like the whip tip. I have not been able to source these items anywhere other than StewMac. And not that that's a huge deal, but they are a little pricey for something you generally use one time and throw away. So if anybody knows of another place to source these things, that would be great to share that in the comments. Because I haven't found one. I think I mentioned before I did find a source for pipettes. They were, however, a little bit too big on the end. So they work great for some things, but for the super glue kind of application, they're definitely too big. And I'm going back again and just dabbing this super glue off of here. Alright, so I'm not going to, if I were in a hurry, I would just shoot some accelerator on those, but I'm not in a hurry, so I'll just let them cure naturally. And that's it. So frets are in, down to the board, and anchored on the fret ends. So I'm going to cut you loose right there and bring you back in. I'll nip these and file and bevel slightly, and that'll be it for the neck. Now I guess I probably ought to decide what I'm doing for a peg head shape here, and add some wing material to that to get it wide enough to do that with, unless I decide I'm already wide enough. Depends on what I want to do. I've been batting this around in my head for quite a while now, and I haven't settled on anything. Can't use the design I used on the very last guitar because I used a 4 and 2 design, and it was just a 6 string, and this having extra 3 tuners. This may be the better way to go. Just keep it straight and run 4 or 5 and 4 up here and go with it. Call it good. So we'll see. Okay, hi. Just went in the house for a little, probably about an hour. Get the let the medium viscosity super glue dry. I just had some dinner, chatted with the wife, watch some YouTube videos. Anyway, I was just getting ready to pull the trigger on the camera here, and the dog was scratching at the door, so I thought I'd let her in. This is Lucy. Say hi to your fan club. Okay. I'll lay down on your blanket over there. Alrighty, we're going to reorganize this thing. I shouldn't say organize. Orient. I don't know how to say that word. It's one of those words. So, gonna call that good right there, I think. And I can sort of see the screen. So, everything should be dry and locked in. So I'm just gonna go back and trim these. I'll zoom in a bit. There we go. Go back in and trim these. And this is when I use the edge of this tool that I ground thinner, so I can get closer to the edge of the fretboard. Typically, I leave a little bit of daylight in there, and you can see I'm kind of leaning down, and I'm pushing down too. I do not want to do anything that's going to make that fret want to push up. Not an awful lot of fret hanging out here right now. So some of them, that one just rolled off the edge because there wasn't enough to even pinch onto. This one's going to do the same. So I've got a double cut little file I glued to a block, sort of as a leveling file, and I've explained previously this is a single cut, that I made these up as end files, fret end files, plus originally fret dressing files, but I've decided I don't care for filing for the fret leveling process. I just use a beam with sandpaper on it. And I'm brushing off the bench so I don't have little fret ends there. Although there's virtually nothing underneath this neck that isn't going to be carved. So if I was to dent it, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Double cut file here. And these up here are the ones that I didn't trim, so I'm going to have a bit more filing to do here. Okay. Pulling away. Where am I here? There you go. See here, I have this area. So I was pushing into it. I want to make sure that I don't ding that up. So I am pulling away from that area. Kind of go back and forth. Now this being a new neck, I don't have finish or anything that I need to worry about, messing anything up. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it around and file this other edge, even though I'm not done on this edge yet, just because it's cutting me, because these things are wicked sharp. Again, if I had a loose fret, there would be a really nasty chirping sound as I was filing, and so that's fairly evident. that I'm okay. If you've watched any of the refretting videos, you know that a little more finesse is required on a refret as far as this part of the operation, because I don't have any finish that I have to worry about on the side of the neck, and I can literally just run this. I got a big block here. This is all going away when it gets carved. So I have a big block that I can just run this down. So I'm perfectly flat and square to the edge of the neck. I'm going to go ahead and run the fine cut file down this side as well. You can see the, well, maybe you can't, I don't know. There's dots along the edge here where I've super glued the ends of those frets in, so I haven't filed far enough to remove that. You're getting a lot different sound with the single cut. That's still not the sound I'm referring to with a loose fret. There's a wicked chatter sound that occurs from that. Okay. I'm not timing this, but you can see it doesn't take all that long to do this. I know I chattered a bit. I'm only at 9 something minutes. So I'm going to switch over to the fine single cut. All right. I have another file. You can buy these. You can also buy this style file from all kinds of suppliers, already made. If you can find a file that's straight enough, you can just glue it to a really straight block and save yourself some money. This is another thing I made up, and it's just a file set in a 30-degree angle, you know, cut in the block with a couple screws to hold it in place. And so that's what I use to bevel the fret ends with. And you can only go one way with this file, unfortunately. And I'd like to make sure that I'm not, I'm clearing my headstock here so I don't have to worry about that. Take a look at this. I don't have my visor on. And I'm sweeping the desk this time off into my trash can. I should have been doing that. And again, just checking my progress. I'm pretty much right at the edge of the fretboard. I got this very last fret here is hanging out a little bit. And so I'm going to go ahead and what I like to do on these is I like to take my fret radius, the bevel on the end of the fret. I actually like to take that into the fretboard a little bit so you don't have a sharp corner here. You could just go right to the very edge of the fretboard and then take a razor blade in between. just to put a little bit of a bevel on the edge of the board, but it works out really nice with just doing it with the file. So that's what I'm just trying to get kind of right at that point. And at this stage of the game, before I've even carved the neck, it's not super critical that this is, you know, anywhere near perfect. Because I'll do my final level and crown once it's in the guitar. The guitar is together. I've mentioned this several times. I like to put my finish unit in a neck jig so that I can set the neck up under string tension and then simulate that when I do my final level. I think it's a much better job, you know, talking about a custom instrument, rather than just having a free floating neck on a bench like they did at Fender in the 60s, or even still. So for me, much better to be able to do it this way. I'm also, and you know, if you want to hate on me for this, I think pluck machines are bogus. I don't think you can beat a guy, a craftsman, that will take the time to really do the job. Pluck machine is better than your average fret level guy in the factory, I guess, but I don't like them. And I'm basing that on having seen some of the work that pluck machines do. Okay, so I'm close enough for the rough in on that. Going to double check here. Now that end of the file is going to hit the headstock, so I have to pay attention on this side. That's just that the end of the file is fatter on that end of the file. My headstock is in the same place on both sides of the guitar. Now I said I would do the final level crown and all that, so I will do just a rough crown with the neck laying here, and that's just basically to kiss the tops and kind of just get them in the ballpark. That should also be relatively quick, and I probably won't do that here tonight on camera just because I don't have my block set up. And I don't want to keep bringing you back in for just one little segments. Oh, that's fine too. Let's see how that's looking. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm right down to the very point on the frets here. I got a few frets down here on this end that are long also. good for this segment. I think the next thing I'm going to do is, well, I'm going to have to finalize my peg head design and decide what I really want to do in regards to this peg head. This is, by the way, I don't know that I've mentioned this before, but it's going to be a flat peg head. It's not a tip back. And so I have the line on the side here where this is going to cut off and then roll up to the fretboard here. And I'm going to try to lay it out with just in the shape it is and see what I end up with. I think that'll be interesting. I may have to I may add some wings so I can do some kind of detail. I'm not going to get all crazy on having straight string pull. I don't think it's hugely critical on this instrument. It doesn't have a tremolo. Although I try to do straight string pull on most of my designs are relatively straight. My original pig head design that I used for quite a few years with a 3x3, and it had a little bit of a sideways pull off the nut, but not anything as serious as a Gibson style or standard acoustic style headstock. So I do kind of shoot for a straight string pull at this point. But like I said, being that it's not a trem, it's not a hugely big deal. So, but I'm going to fiddle with that a bit now that I'm thinking about it. I want to kind of determine where I'm going with this before I do the carve, and go from there. All right.